Awesome. Well, thank you everyone to our Cypress best practices talk with some of our favoriteest people in the whole world, which is our Cypress ambassadors. So we wanted to from from all of us here at Cypress, wanted to say thank you guys for coming on the call and sharing some of your knowledge with so many amazing people. We have I'm blown away by how many people are on this right now. So it just shows how much love there is for Cypress, as well as like people want to hear, from you guys. So that's really exciting. So can we go to the next slide? Perfect. So this is a poll. Emily, do you want me to lead this, or do you want you? Essentially,
I can jump in. Yeah, so we are using Slido, and Philip here, once he introduces himself, he can tell you a little bit more about Slido, but we wanted a way to hear from you all about how you feel about Cypress. So you can scan the QR code or join in at slido.com, and you can share the emoji that you think best represents how you feel about Cypress. So we'll make a little word cloud to get everyone in and ready to go. And then we'll get into the introductions. So thanks everyone. Oh, look at all these great emojis. I love this. Can't wait to see more.
This is super cool. Yeah, go ahead and continue.
When will we start the recording, by the way?
We have started. Huh. Can you go to the next slide, Emily? Let's see. There we go. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, my name is Jordan Powell. I am on the DX engineering team, the developer experience team here at Cypress. And it's amazing. It's like the best job ever. And so for those of you who want to follow me on the socials, Twitter, GitHub, or whatever, you can do so right there at Jordan Powell 88. But that's a little bit about me. I hate talking about myself, so we can continue on really quickly. Perfect. But this is the most exciting part, which is I'm excited to introduce our ambassador panelists today. The first one is going to be Tobias. I'm not even going to pretend to announce your guys' last names, because I will completely embarrass myself and you. But we have Tobias and Ramona and Philip. So we'll hear from each and one of them here in a second. We're going to be asking them questions, as well as letting you all ask questions at the end. But wanted to first just introduce them all as a high level. But yeah, go ahead and hit the next slide. Perfect. So just so everyone knows, that the agenda for today is basically in the end is we wanted to create an event that would really feature and highlight some of the best Cypress ambassadors that we have here at Cypress. And we really wanted to provide an avenue for them to share some of their practical best practice experience that they've had working in projects, working with people like you all in the community, so that they can kind of just pass on along knowledge. So that's the general goal for today. Though we're doing the introduction now, we'll have I have some best practice kind of questions to kind of cue them off, and then we'll have some time for a Q&A at the end, as well as some upcoming things here at Cypress, because we have a lot of exciting things that are getting ready to come out here soon. So stay tuned. Don't turn the dial. No, I'm kidding. Continue. Perfect. So here's the first question. And I'm going to start. We'll start with you, Philip. Share your title, your row, and your role and your location, just so that everyone has a better feel for who you are, where you're from, and all that stuff.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks very much for inviting me, first of all. It's super exciting to be here with 1,000 people, over 1,000 people. That's so cool. All right, so my name is Philip. I am a tester at a company called Slido, and the product of which you are currently using also. So that's exciting. Hopefully, if you find any bugs, feel free to write to me. But yeah, I'm a tester. I do mostly test automation and testing with Cypress. So yeah, that's what I do, and I'm located in a very little nice country in the center of Europe, which is called Slovakia. And before we started, I told everyone you should come visit. So come and visit Slovakia. It's really nice.
Nice, nice. Ramona, let's go ahead and I ask you the same questions. What's your title, your role, and where you're located in the world? Because we got people from like the whole planet right now on this thing.
Oh yeah, thank you. Gladly, I want to introduce myself. But first, thank you so much for being here. It's basically making my day and I'm so hyped, and thank you so much. My name is Ramona. I'm living in Germany, so basically I guess 1/2 of an hour away from the Netherlands, so in a really small village near Münster, if anyone knows Münster, I don't know, but it's close to the Netherlands. So if you are either in Germany or in the Netherlands, please drop me a message. I'm working as a software developer at the moment, to be precise, more like a front-end focus, but I have a quite interesting path. So I started as an application dev in .NET, transitioned to quality assurance. So I was a quality engineer for almost 4 to 5 years, and then transitioned back to be a front-end engineer. I'm working at Shopware, which is a company providing an open source e-commerce solution, so basically building online shops all the time. And with that being said, I have an open source background. I'm totally in love when it comes to open source, and if you are working on open source as well, I really love you as well. And yeah, I guess that's the most important stuff about me.
Awesome. Thanks, Ramona. And Tobias, we'll finish up with you. Tell everyone who you are, where you're at, and what you do.
Yeah, I will keep it short and firm. I'm Tobias Struckmayer. That's a pronunciation. I'm principal JavaScript engineer at Adesso. It's a big consultancy here in Germany, and I live in Dortmund. It's west of Germany. So if anyone is near, hit me up. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I'm feeling very honored to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So now that we have a little bit of background out there, everyone knows a little bit more about you guys. I want to first start off with this question. We have, like you said, over 1,000 people already on this call, and many more will watch this after the fact. So my question is going to be, and I'll leave this open to whoever one of you three want to answer it first, but what would be your advice for people that are just starting to use Cypress? Maybe they have very little end-to-end testing or testing experience, but what is like if someone came to you and said, from your experience, what would you tell that person? Hey, I want to get started with end-to-end testing in Cypress or whatever. What would be like some practical advice you guys would give them?
If you want me, I would like to start.
We want you, Ramona. Yes.
Sounds quite weird, but just try it out. And yeah, start the test runner, click around, see what you can expect, how you can interact via Cypress with your application, maybe open the dev tools, find something you're familiar with, and use if you want to use plain JavaScript to write, that's totally fine. If you want to use something BDD related, like you can just try to find the way you are most comfortable with and what suits your background, and don't feel bad if some people say, yeah, you need to do this and that. So just come here and find yourself comfortable.
Yeah, if I may.
Tobias, go ahead.
Into that. After you played around, like Ramona said, where you will have your first aha events or aha times, I suggest you really read the documentation. That sounds weird maybe, but it's worth it. It's one of the best documentations on any open source or any software I used yet. So shout out to the Cypress team. You really did a great job. And if I can recommend one section that you have to read about chain of commands. then you will understand Cypress. It's a key to make very stable and less of surprising tests in Cypress, and then you leverage the full power of it.
That's awesome. From someone, the DX team owns the doc, so I'll take all the credit. I'm joking. But thank you guys. Very kind words. There's definitely, we always see the flaws, like it could be better at this or this, but it's always good to hear that the docs are helpful. So what about you, Philip? What advice would you give someone?
Yeah, Ramona and Tobias kind of took my answers.
That's why you had to jump in first. I left it open-ended.
Yeah, so. Yeah. I was about to say like this question, by the way, is kind of close to my heart, because like 6 years ago when I started in Slido, I not only I started in Slido, I started in tech in general. So my background is in psychology, and I started to work in tech. And like a half year into testing, I started using Cypress. So that was like version 0.18 or something like that. And yeah, what I needed to do is to write my first test, and to write it as soon as possible. So yeah, don't worry about page objects or pattern, or just try to make a quick test, and you see you will learn a lot along the way. And by the way, +1 for the documentation. It was always stellar, even in that version 0.18. Not only I had to learn Cypress, I needed to learn JavaScript. And I kind of learned a lot of JavaScript thanks to like the stellar documentation that you guys have made. And yeah, at this point, it feels like I'm sort of selling the documentation. It's free, so don't worry about it, right? But it's really well written, and I can vouch for the fact that you can learn a lot from that.
Awesome. Again, I always appreciate the docs are awesome comments, but no, it's great stuff, Philip. I'll start with you since we ended with you.
All right.
Let's talk about a way that Cypress has helped change the way you write code. And if so, like how? I'd love to if there's a practical an example of maybe at Slido or another opportunity, like maybe something you learned and maybe like writing tests end up changing the way you actually implemented the code.
Yeah, I mean, not sure if I can talk about change since I learned to code with Cypress. But yeah, what I like to say often is that Cypress brings developers closer to testing or end-to-end testing, and testers closer to web development. So what it has definitely changed for me is that Cypress kind of is closely tied to the application that you are testing. So it made me understand the application better. So things like what is storage, Redux, Vuex, whatever, APIs, how are cookies used, what's the authorization, etc. Like everything that a web application is made of, it sort of brought me closer to that and brought me closer to understanding that. Because if I had a scenario, a user story that I wanted to automate, I needed to understand how the application that I'm testing actually works. And one of the great ways to sort of learn about that, and I know like testers might be a little hesitant, at least those that I have spoken to sort of dive into web development itself. So I actually had an experience with creating an application. I do a Cypress workshop, and I needed to create an application to test. And building a very simple application can give you like a really, really good understanding for testing and how to approach a certain test. So I think in that regards, like bringing me closer to the web development itself, that was sort of how it has changed my thinking.
Awesome. That's great. What about you, Tobias? Any practical examples of like maybe how using Cypress has changed the way you write code?
I mean, in my case, it's I'm coming from the coding side. I've been a software engineer since over 20 years now, and um, I was coming to testing new or more to testing, and what I really enjoyed in Cypress after using other testing solutions as well was that I didn't have to change how I code my application, because Cypress enabled me mostly to test it without any change. There had been rare cases, but even those the Cypress team has removed and improved the software. So I really enjoy that I don't have to change the way how I code. There's only one thing that I learned during using Cypress. Before, I was very hesitant about adding test IDs to the DOM. And I thought, oh, why? You can use the CSS selector. And Cypress also taught me so much more about test stability and the goals of testing that I now think, okay, I like to use also other ways for selecting elements, but now I'm more like, okay, test IDs are okay, and I can use them for my development as well.
Absolutely. I have a great story to tell, but I want to hear from Ramona about the same question.
Actually, when it comes to the IDs to be mentioned, I would go into a similar direction when it comes to best practices, not only when it comes to testing, but also when it comes to my source code, as the question is saying. And I was taught how to empathize testability of my code. How can I write good source code, and how can I make it simple to write tests for me? And that may be using data attributes and not CSS selector. Please don't ever, or try to avoid at least testing and test implementation details. So like user tests. So it gave me lots of answers to learn how to write high quality code. And I was like being a bit in between. I have the education as a developer, but I go the way from QA to developer again. So I really needed to learn how to write high quality, pragmatic code, clean code, and it helped me achieving that.
That's awesome. Yeah, we always talk about I'm glad you mentioned this, Philip, that one of our goals is to make developers the experience of writing tests fun. So it's like it makes you like shift closer to becoming a test engineer, because it's fun. You enjoy writing tests, and obviously, we can all we love the benefits of testing, but it's like the pain points is the reason why we maybe not want to do it or something. So it's like when we can make that process fun, that's great. And as well as like Ramona and Philip, like if you didn't come from a pure engineering background like Tobias or something, it's like it also makes it, the more you do it, the more you shift and become like a developer too. So I always love that Cypress sort of bridges those gaps. But the one thing, Tobias, that you had shared, and I had worked for a company, and I was doing some consulting work, and I had just started, and I was banging out features and so on and so forth. And like a month later, I get invited to some random meeting. And long story short, I was the end-to-end testing team was using IDs to basically run all their tests, and I was breaking all their tests because I was just like ripping out code. I'm like, I don't need this, like, and all this stuff. So yeah, it's a very practical example from my experience of when having test IDs, you're less likely to be like, maybe I should rip this out, when you actually see that, because from a developer, you may not know, like, oh, other teams are using this DOM related ID or class, because you just think, hey, it's just for the UI or whatever, something like that. So anyways, that's my quick story. So I want to shift a little bit more. So this talk obviously is centered around you guys as ambassadors. So I'm curious, like, as an ambassador, what is the most common question that you get asked from the community? Again, like the most common question, because people are reaching out to you guys are doing workshops and training and providing resources. Like, is there a common question that you guys get asked from the community? and we'll yeah,
Yes.
we'll let Philip go first. He seemed
Yes,
ready to
there
jump
is.
on this one.
Yeah, there is. And that question is, should I use page objects? That's like the most common one that I get. And yeah, the answer is yes, you can. It's totally okay. I even made like a short video about it. Or it's okay to use page objects. It's not a problem. The pattern you choose is totally up to you. What I will say on this topic, since we are talking about like best practices, and in my opinion, like ideally tests should kind of mimic the behavior of the user, right? And ideally, tests are stable, they are readable, and you can write them kind of fast, right? At least like that's the background that I'm coming from. Like Slido was 6 years ago, we were still pretty much in the startup phase, and like every second matters. So we had to write tests quickly, and to write tests, writing tests is one thing. The other thing is maintaining tests, and that means, all right, if a test is flaky, if it's falling, what then? If it failed for a good reason, what then? If it's abstracted into like 30 level of page objects, then you definitely have a hard time debugging it, right? So that might be a case against page objects. Because if you take Cypress commands, they're pretty readable. You can have a plain Cypress command test and sort of look at it and know exactly what it is doing. My advice to like the question of page objects versus any kind of other pattern is to go readability first. Because if you can read your test fast enough, even if it fails, even if you need to maintain it, even if you want to find out what it does, you can do that quickly. If you have too many abstractions, too many page objects and nested objects and selectors there and actions here and etc., it might be a hell to debug. At least that's my experience, right? So take that with a grain of salt, as they say. I mean, if you're working with a huge project, obviously the requirements for making the code organized well are slightly maybe slightly different. At least that's what I hear. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Tobias, anything about this? What's the most common question you get asked from the community?
Yeah, and what Philip said is really a question that comes up often because people are used to page objects, and I can only double what Philip said to that. What I sometimes prefer is making like if you need multiple commands or a more complex command chain to achieve something, like selecting something in a drop-down that is not a standard browser drop-down, but something written with Angular or React in a completely different way. I write small helper functions that abstract it a little bit away, and then I have a function select from dropdown, and I pass the value, and it is selected. That's a way of abstraction I think is okay, because it's a very thin abstraction, and I want to keep it thin, and I would like to build something like a DSL. Maybe some people have to Google it, domain-specific language. I can later put it into the chat for everyone to look it up, to make that code more readable. And I mean, people always need to come back to the test, and if it fails, and need to understand, okay, what is it testing? How is it doing it? And when I formed these functions well, or maybe I have written commands on that, then it's much easier for the developer to understand what's going on there, how to fix it, And yeah, that's a very important point. That's why I wanted to emphasize on it again. And another one that I hear sometimes is how I write conditional tests. You know, if that, then do that, and if this, then do another pass. And there, my suggestion is, don't do it. Write another test and cover all the possible conditions with multiple tests. And that will give you much more stable tests. And it's always about reproducible tests and stable tests. And you want to prevent any ambiguity as much as possible.
Nice. So I was secretly hoping we would have a page objects fight here. So the Ramona, this is your chance to completely tell them that, you know, page objects are the worst thing in the world. No, I'm kidding. As ambassador, what's the most common question that you get asked from the community?
I cannot decide between two questions, and the page object thing is a good transition, even though I'm not a page object hater, but it gets me to another point. One of the first question I would answer a lot is how to write good and clean end-to-end tests. And as a page object can be an abstraction, I would say please do it if you want to, but sometimes duplicate code is not too bad, because in my opinion, the most important thing is that you can understand your test at first sight. It's clean, it's short. Please don't do too much inside of your test. And you don't need to waste any of your headspace or your precious energy to understand your test. And yeah, page objects, of course, I use them myself, or custom commands, it's the same thing. If you have some steps which are coming back lots of times, it's totally fine. But sometimes if it makes your test harder to understand, or a bit like I need to click through lots of classes to understand my test, you should challenge it. And there are other patterns or best practices to achieve a better comprehensibility of your test quite fast. My favorite one is, I guess the name was 3-parts rule. I guess it's from Roy Osheroff, and it will help you to use good test titles so you can instantly see what your test is about if it fails in your CI, for example. It should keep it clear what your test wants to accomplish. And the 3-part, like the name says, 3-part rule says that your test title should contain what is being tested, under what circumstances or scenario is it happening, and what is the expected result. So if you, for example, use the syntax like that, you can instantly see what's happening and what's failing without clicking through your CI or screenshots or something like that. So there are lots of ways to have clean tests, and yeah, keep it short, keep it simple, stupid, or stupid simple. I always change those last two words. So yeah, have it like an assistant, not a hindrance to you. The other question I'm basically asked a lot is a more general one. You can apply it to Cypress, but to other tools as well. When should I write an end-to-end test? Philip already told about execution time and the precious time they take to be executed in CI. And of course, I guess it's the nature of things that end-to-end tests take more time, like just maybe checking the output of the unit test or something like that. So when should you write one? In my opinion, at least in my projects, I decide on if it's a common case to write an end-to-end test, a fully blown end-to-end test, like maybe a feature the user will encounter a lot, or the typical happy path or the critical path, basically. Another question would be, how runnable is the feature? How much damage would be caused if someone fails or a regression pops up? For example, in e-commerce, it should be good and important to register or log in inside of the online shop or buy products. So I will get into much detail and write maybe a bit more end-to-end tests for those things. And is this a case where a unit test would be better? Then I prefer to write a unit test, for example, for validations.
Awesome. Good stuff there. I'm always interested because from the DX, from being a member of Cypress, the questions we always get are, when is this next thing coming? So it's interesting that the questions you get are very different. That's funny. So I'm curious from your guys'
We
standpoint.
get those questions too, but we don't have
you just
the
ignore
answer.
them. You
We
just
don't
then
have the
message me,
answer.
right?
Yeah.
That's funny. So I'm curious, like, if you guys were, and maybe some of you guys have been in this situation, but if you've ever been in a situation where you had to sell Cypress to like a stakeholder or a engineering manager or someone in your company, what would be like your favorite thing about Cypress? Like, what would be the number one reason why you would choose Cypress and why it's valuable to invest the time and the money into using it?
Yeah, quite easily said. You can see what happens inside of your test. Before, I was using a tool where I cannot do that and just had some log entries, and I really struggled. So having the possibility to have maybe video recording, some dashboard statistics, or the test runner where you can actually step into basically anything. You can print out everything. You can use the common dev tools of your browser to inspect such a lot of things when it comes to debugging helps me a lot. And last but not least, the time travel feature.
Yeah.
It's going to get harder and harder, whoever answers this last. So Philip, start thinking. Go
Philip,
ahead,
you want
Tobias.
first? Yeah, generally, I mean, it's two things that you maybe have to sell. First, you have to sell, okay, why testing? And I mean, there's always a point, okay, I make a big investment into this software and I want it to work. So I also want to secure my investment that it will still work tomorrow. So I use testing. And the second thing is that I then sell is like, okay, please let's use Cypress. And one of my arguments is very often, and I don't think that other solutions are bad, but in the experience of myself and also in my company, it's about 2 to 3 times as much energy and time you have to invest into writing tests with some other tools and also in maintaining them, and they are breaking more often. Of course, this is a little bit biased now, and as I said, other tools are not bad. Maybe some are catching up, but Cypress is really giving a good experience in that, and that's why I always suggest using it.
Jordan, you kind of changed the question because I thought like it should be like my favorite thing about Cypress, and now I have to do a sales pitch for someone. Yes. That's much harder.
You can do your favorite thing too. I just
no worries. It's a good question, and I think it's an important one because if you're choosing a tool, then you like really have to make that decision in advance. If I had to convince someone of Cypress, I would probably take him into a room and just write a test right before their eyes, because I could do it so quickly. I think that would be a good selling point. Also, I would probably try to find some backup. So I would, I think I would get some developers and just tell them, hey, you can write tests in Typescript with Cypress. So how about that? And I think I would get a yes from them, and that could probably help. So yeah, like the adoption is, I think, pretty easy. And at this day and age, when we are trying to like ship fast and be quick with like continuous integration and everything, writing tests, as you said, it could be a boring task. And if you can save some time with either writing and maintaining or running your tests, I think like that's a good thing. Like that is something that might have value in the eyes of stakeholders. So yeah, but the TypeScript is definitely a great addition there, because a lot of developers are already using TypeScript, and with Cypress, I mean, there are probably some other tools I think that can use TypeScript, but as soon as you start using TypeScript with your tests, you're kind of adding that additional layer of testing where you can use your types from the application in your tests. And then whenever something significant changes, and we talked about NX, right? The monorepo, where you can sort of do a type check of everything. And if there's a change in the application in the types that are also being used in tests, then you can make your tests fail before they even run. And I think like that's kind of an amazing thing. And I see there's a question in Slido about TypeScript, and I would definitely like, I don't see many testers using TypeScript. I would definitely like encourage to explore that because there are definitely great benefits, and especially if you have your tests coupled with the application and they can sort of communicate with each other through those types.
Like a true Angular developer. I know you love your TypeScript, Philip.
Yeah.
And like me. What about you, Tobias, Ramon? Do you guys recommend, like, do you guys use TypeScript in your testing?
Yes.
Yeah, recently.
I really like it because it gives me more. Or let's say I have to type less because everything is already there in the IDE. It pops up. I just choose. I make less errors, and as Philip stated, I can share with my application some types, and it becomes easier to write tests. So yeah, I recommend it, and also. First, I was thinking, okay, you just need to add a plugin to use TypeScript. And then I found out that's wrong. As long as TypeScript is already there, you just name your files .ts and it works out of the box. That was also one of these great developer experiences I had with Cypress, that it was just working. And yeah, so I can just recommend it. Use it, and you can part by part, get used to it. You don't have to use all the things at once. But if you taste it a little bit, how good it can be, you get addicted.
Oh yeah.
Anything you want to add to that, Ramona? Yeah.
Yeah. In my private side projects, I'm using TypeScript. Yeah, for most of the things, just not for the old ones because couldn't move everything to TypeScript yet. And in my main project at work at Shopware, we don't use TypeScript yet because quantity-wise, it's a lot of things to move. So it's sometimes a bit painful too, if I can be honest about that. So I hope to be able to migrate it soon. But in my recent project, I basically kickstarted people on using TypeScript with the tests, and it worked out like a charm. I was pleasantly surprised.
Nice. No, I agree. I'm a huge TypeScript fan in general. So I think you're right, Philip, in that I think there's great benefit in learning that if something breaks, I would rather know at compile time than after, running a whole suite of tests. So that's super helpful. So we're almost done with this portion of the questions, and then we'll get to answering questions from everyone, all of our participants. But I'd be curious, we are going to answer this last question. What is your personal favorite thing that you love about Cypress? And for me, this has changed over time. I've always loved one thing, and then after a while I'm like, ooh, I really like this better. So I'm curious, right now for you guys ambassadors, what is your favorite thing about Cypress, about using Cypress?
In my case, I guess it's the time travel feature, so I can take a look at any step done in my test. It saves my life lots of time when it comes to debugging, even if I'm not just fixing a bug and not doing directly test work. It helps me a lot to get to the cause of an error and fix it. May it be the test itself or an actual bug, doesn't care. It helps me really, really much when it comes to that.
Nice. Anything you guys want to add, Philip, Tobias? What's your favorite thing right now?
Unmuted, but I can jump in. I think recently I was asked about favorite command, And I actually have two. Like one would definitely be intercept. It is magic, right? You can do like so much with that. Test different like edge cases or hard to reach scenarios, and I absolutely love the options that you have with that. And I'm kind of still exploring those. Like I still sometimes stumble upon something new because it's like such a huge feature in just like that single command. So if you want to check your error messages or delayed page, or I don't know, this page is loading too slow message or something like that, or 500 errors or something like that. Like you can do all of that, and it seems like you can achieve so many different edge cases with that. The other one that is slowly becoming my favorite would be the session that was just kind of recently released, like a couple of months ago, right? I don't think it's still like super popular, but I think it should be because it's kind of amazing, right? It can do sort of like a snapshot of your browser, which you can cache and then like paste it into your other test. And I think I read a blog somewhere like that someone started using this, and it like drove down the execution time like to a half or something like that, because you don't have to do login every time. You just have that snapshot and just paste it in your test, and you're good to go. So that one, I think that if more and more people adapt that's going to be a killer one. But it's still sort of, I think it's still like in an experimental mode, so I guess not too many people are yet adopting it. But yeah, that one is going to be huge.
Yeah, and maybe if I'm even slightly repeating myself, the favorite thing is somehow the hidden champion, like the command chain. I mentioned it before, I know, but how it's working and that retriability that is built in really, I think, makes Cypress so powerful and stable in tests. That made a huge difference in how I think about testing. And another thing is also, as Ramona also said, with the time traveling, but also that I have that log, what happened, and I can click it and I can visually debug my test. I can see what element has been selected, what details are in there. It's a beautiful log that gives me more information that I really love, because I had been so frustrated sometimes when writing unit tests or so, and you use something like just whatever. It's not bad about the tools, but you write the test, it fails, and you think, okay, why? What happened? I mean, I see the end result, but why? And in Cypress, I can just go through it. So this is very close to my favorite feature, and it's also awesome for people who are new to that tool because they have a chance to see what's happening.
Nice. So I have to say, Philip, I'm glad you mentioned Intercept and Session, because if you like those tools, you will really like some things that are coming out soon with Cypress. I can't say what those are, but if using switching over to using SIDA Intercept and SIDA Session will definitely be a benefit to people moving forward. So that's all the questions that we have. I think that there's another Slido question here, Emily, or Q&A. Okay. Or yeah, here. There we go. On a scale of 1 for everyone out there, on a scale 1 to 5, how would you rate this session? Uh-oh, we're going to find out. Everyone hates it. But in the meantime, looks like we've had quite a bit of questions. Robert and Adam from the DX team, they have been, looks like, answering a lot of those. Thank you, guys. But we can get to, I'm not sure if there's any that haven't been answered, but we'd be happy to take, I think we have a couple minutes for questions, Emily, I think.
Yeah, I guess we should answer at least like those top ones. So People are curious.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of questions in the Q&A. Like you said, Adam and Robert from the DX team have been doing a great job answering some of those. Adam and Robert, if you do feel like there's like some questions that we should absolutely go ahead and answer now, feel free to chime in. If not, Jordan, if there's any questions that you're seeing in the Q&A panel that we can go to, I appreciate everyone's participation and discussion happening in the chat. It's with 1,000+ attendees, we're not going to be able to get to every single question, but we do promise to take some of these questions and potentially have more opportunities for content or other opportunities for conversation and discussion in the future. So it's clear that everyone has been really excited about this event. So we're excited to see what more we can do with you all in the future. So yeah, Jordan, do you see any questions that are popping up, or again, Adam or Robert, do you see any questions that you want to make sure that we're answering?
Man, it looks like, from my perspective, it looks like everyone has been answered. There's been a lot of questions about how to do specific things like logging in and Safari browser support. Looks like we got some answers to those. If you have questions like this, everyone can see the Q&A section, right, Emily? So they could just browse through, and also like there's a lot of links to a lot of those things in there. Let's see. Another maybe a good place to start in general. What time is it? Let's see. So many questions.
I know you guys are answering all, or asking all such good questions. I feel like I'm scrolling constantly just to keep up. So yeah, like Philip, if you had something that you wanted to share, this would be a great time.
Yeah, I mean, I could maybe answer the top question that's on Slido, if that's okay. I have it opened here, so that's why I'm sort of like peeking in and try to see what are people curious about.
That would be great.
So there's a question of like, what is the best pattern for data injection usage management, especially when running parallel tests in apps that require large data. So thank you, Michael, for that question. And I would say there are three like main ways you can handle that. First one would be seeding your database. So if you have ever used CY task, you can sort of snap out of the browser, come into Node, and then execute any kind of Node script that you want. So that can seed your database, that can do some other cool stuff. It basically gives you so many options. So that would be like option number one. Option number two would be, as I mentioned, CY session. You can do like a couple of steps of like logging in or creating data or something like that, and then take that snapshot and sort of load it whenever, wherever you need it. And then the third one, there probably are many more, but a third one that I'm kind of aware of would be to sort of use your API to create your data before your test, like in the before each block or in the before block or somewhere else. And then like open your browser and use that data in the test. The problem with that might be that you're sort of like creating data, whether that is in your like staging database or something like that. The way we solved it is that we would run a cron job every morning at 5 a.m. that would just basically delete all of the testing data. And we sort of had a pattern of what that data is. So any data created by user, tester, something, that would be the ones to delete. So yeah.
If I may chime in, I'm doing exactly that via API. So I'm using Cypress fixtures to basically create test fixtures and sending them to the API. It's kind of easy if you have an API first application, as I have in my daily routine. So that works quite fine actually. When it comes to cleaning it up, I'm not using the most best wonderful solution, I guess, because it's basically rewriting via a MySQL dump, which is not that really great, but the most stable solution I came up with. If you got any other ideas how to handle such cleanups, but yeah, an online shop is a quite complex application, so I cannot determine exactly which data is written if I, for example, do an API request to create a product with lots of associations and stuff. So and that's basically my daily doing experience when it comes to test data.
Yeah, handling data is always sort of a problem. I guess there's a reason why that is a top top question.
Yeah, and we actually on this Stay Connected slide here, we actually have we go into detail on multiple ways how to handle different data scenarios. We have we have a real world testing app where it's kind of like a real world app and a bunch of different kind of best practices that we recommend. We have that on GitHub, as well as something that like I'm super excited about is Robert and some other folks on the DX team have been working for a very long time to create our own Cypress curriculum, essentially. So that way we can help enforce best practices and patterns for people like you guys. And so if you go to learn.cypress.io, I highly recommend it. It's something for me when I first started. I took it because I was like, I just want to like retake this class. I want to know exactly how Cypress recommends me using Cypress. And I had used Cypress for many years, but it was really beneficial for any level of skill to be able to go in and refresh yourself. So I highly recommend that course. And again, that's learn.cypress.io. It's a great resource. And we go dive deep into how to see databases and just handling like Ramona mentioned, fixtures and just kind of all the different ways to handle data. And a lot of those questions, there's trade-offs to all of them and sort of the level of purity and true end-to-end that you want. Those questions, we help answer like some of those questions based upon like what your requirements are, like what are the real problems you want to make sure that don't fail, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that is a good place to start. We also have on our doc site, we have a best practices from Cypress. That is there's like I think 10 or 15 kind of anti-patterns that we see quite a bit, and basically kind of do's and don'ts, very practical advice on how to select elements or how not to do certain things. So that's another place that's really great. I know a lot of people, we didn't get to everyone, their questions. There's just so many, it's hard to keep up with, but I will say we do have a Cypress Discord channel, which is going to be a great place to leave questions, and we will be monitoring those and answering questions there. We have obviously lots of repos on GitHub. Feel free to submit an issue or ask questions there. We also have you can reach out to any of our team members here, the ambassadors, to on Twitter if you want to directly message us. That'd be a great place to ask specific questions as well. And then in terms of like Emily, you have anything specifically about the ambassadors, like in the upcoming events you want to share?
Yeah, so we are relaunching our ambassador program. So if you'd like to be part of events like this or connect more with the Cypress team, you can go to our the link that's on here, look for our ambassadors, and you can learn a little bit more about the program and being connected and working with us. So these are just some ways to stay connected. And as we continue to roll out more ways to stay connected with our community, you'll continue to see more from us along the way. And extra special thank you to the 3 ambassadors who did join us today. So I want to make sure to give you a massive round of applause for your work. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for invitation.
Of course. Is
Is
there any final thoughts any of you guys have, as I think we're like got a minute left. Any final thoughts from all 3 of you?
I have an invitation if I can. Yeah, hopefully that's okay. We talked about it with Emily, so hopefully I'm not trying to be too salesy, but I'm doing a workshop on Cypress. If you like to learn more, you can visit my page or check me out on Twitter or LinkedIn, and you'll definitely find your way to that. If you want a direct link, then it's philipries.com/workshop, but you'll find it. So end of May, you're all invited.
When it comes to best practices, in my opinion, it's the most important thing to have the mindset of keep it simple, stupid. So please take care that you write your tests the way they assist you in doing your task and not in being an impediment or hindrance. So try to keep them lean and short and easy to understand for everyone. Your future me will be really, really grateful to you.
Awesome. Any closing tasks or comments, Tobias?
So much already had been said. I just want to give one tip that I always drop in my workshops, and this is don't wait for a specific amount of time. What I sometimes did before, like wait for 500 or 1000 milliseconds or more, because that's unstable. You can do that, of course, with Cypress, but don't do that. It's always an anti-pattern. And the sentence I always have is wait for requests to happen or for elements to appear instead of a fixed time. And this is also so life-changing and is the last tip I wanted to give to the audience.
Awesome. Any closing thought, anything closing here, Emily, we need to cover?
No, I think just, round it out and close up shop there, Jordan.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining our best practices with our Cypress Ambassadors webinar. So thank you guys for joining. Thanks to our ambassadors for joining. Thanks to Robert and Adam from our DX team for helping answer questions. And like I said, for any additional questions, reach out to us on Twitter or our Discord channel. We'd be happy to answer any additional questions. Thank you guys and have a good rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much for being here and goodbye.
Bye. Was nice to see you. Stay
Absolutely.
healthy.